box from moving there during a trade. He ran out of air right before he made it to the airlock and downed again. He attempted to complete the round in the biodome and made it pretty far, but ended up dying during a trade to a respawner, ending his run 14 hours early. 3 months later, he was one-upped by American player Crave, who reached 177. Crave played pretty much the same way, except instead of AK instas, he did instas in spawn using the M14. No one had really attempted this before, but it was much faster. He spammed at the 2 windows in the hole in spawn, running out and down the stairs when he needed to buy ammo. Between this and general efficiency, he would reach 177 almost 10 hours faster than ACB, but his game would end to a DirectX error, an error that only happens on PC, when you turn your monitor off too many times. However, as 2015 went on, the competition grew less and less, until Furret was one of the only ones still attempting. The year ended with no progress on the 200, but 2016 was a different story. In January 2016,
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services.
a trendsetter player named Magic Glowbox would play a game to 183, although he did not consider himself to have the record, as he still considered it to be 159. But what he did in the game caught the attention of the community. Glowbox didn't actually use the biodome method for drops at all. Instead, he simply traded his Gershes into the box for QEDs, then back for a new set of Gershes. And through this game, he proved that this could be faster than Dome, much faster actually. Glowbox would end up dying in this game after downing during M14 instas, and unsuccessfully trying a full horde strategy in the biodome while he waited for Jug to come back. But it would become one of the most important games for the future of moves. Yet, for the time being, Glowbox would fade into the shadows on the map. But that was okay, because someone else would become so dedicated to racing Furret to 200 that the achievement was unavoidable. Because, as we all know, the best motivation is a little friendly, cutthroat competition. Also in January 2016, a player known as Spirit, also known as Laiku and by many other names, but his most famous era was Spirit, achieved round 173 on Moon and died while attempting Crave's M14 insta-kill strat. Not quite world record, but it gave him a vision of the 200 being his. In March 2016, he fired it up again. His strategy was what had become meta in Spawn, standing at the hole and letting the zombies from the windows come in, running to the back corner of the room to hit them with the ray gun, and then returning to the hole and killing the stragglers with zap guns, which don't affect the error. Spirit was a god at surviving, despite a number of close calls. He was a bit tentative to use Glowbox's trading strategy since it was so new, so he biodomed when he couldn't get a drop from Gershes, heading there a total of 33 times throughout his game and spending a total of 8 hours there. But it's notable that his drop luck in the late game was insane. From round 159 to 190, a period of nearly 20 hours, he did not have to go to the biodome at all, because he always got drops to hack where he needed them. Spirit also made some deep-cut discoveries in this game as well, although he didn't realize it at the time, such as the fact that Gershes do not actually one-hit kill on very high rounds. Zombies are first damaged down to 1 HP while nearing the Gersh, and then they're finished off when they reach the black hole. But if a zombie does not reach that black hole part, it will not die, but it will be killable by anything afterward, including the damage connection check that occurs to confirm that a bullet hit a zombie before applying that bullet's damage. This resulted in an extremely rare instance where Spirit Gershed the zombies, got a drop he hacked into a mass, then shot a zombie that failed to die by the Gersh with his actions, and immediately got another mass, something that had not been demonstrated before by any other player. This was also the first world record game to use a 5-perk strategy. Normally, Black Ops 1 has a 4-perk limit, but players started throwing QEDs at stamina throughout the game, as one of the grenade's effects was that it could give you a free extra perk if thrown near that perk's machine. With this strategy, stamina was not necessary, but it was very helpful. He didn't even buy Quick Revive until his very first insta-kill round on 163, right after he nearly died. I'll let him tell you all about it.
As you can see right there, man just bought Quick Revive on 164. Now the reason that man did that is because, well, you're about to see here in a few seconds, is because of what happened on 163. Now I have no idea what I was doing here. I went complete Sultanat and had the wave gun out on an insta round when I have Mustang and Sally's. So it's as if I was doming for nothing right there. Now, if I would have died there, that would have been easily the biggest fail in all of zombies ever.
But he was able to use Furret's Semtex insta-kill strategy for the entire game, rocketing him to winning the 200 race in a comfortable 65 hours. He didn't even take his first and only down until 202 when the zombies overwhelmed him at the insta spot. His luck took a downturn after 200. For example, his biodome trip on 200 lasted 40 minutes before he got a drop to control the zombie square. He ended up resetting on 208 at just under 75 hours. Spirit commented that he wasn't totally satisfied with this game, theorizing that the game could have been a 212 or 213 with better luck, and that a 215 could be in sight with greatness. Despite that, he'd stay at the top of the world on loot, but not on contestant. 3 months later, Furret caught up to Spirit in the race and tied him at 208. Unfortunately, not much footage remains of this game, but Furret was able to lap Spirit's time by quite a bit. 6 hours to be exact, simply because he used Magic Warbox's box trading strategy, showing just how powerful it actually was. Unfortunately, his game would freeze in the biodome, likely due to spamming the wave gun too much in the windows in the early game, in addition to having a lot of box hits and throwing a lot of semtexes. But his moonwalk would not end there. By this time, restarts were becoming easier as players had figured out about pre-saving games on Black Ops 1. The name makes it sound very involved, but it's actually pretty simple. When you die and let the game over screen play out and let it start a new game for you, that game will have many of the same initial randomizations as the last game you played. For example, you'll get the same character and first drop cycle, but most importantly for Moon, the mystery box and the hacker will start in the same place. This made it quicker to spend an initial game no-clipping and making sure the box was in the place you wanted it, in this case a place with air, so the biodome, and then killing yourself, letting the game restart, and playing regularly from there. Later in 2016, a massive discovery regarding reset would be made for all maps. Up to this point, players thought the exact reset time was largely random and uncontrollable, but after Furret had made an entity tracker, a player named Oxygen showed that reset directly had to do with how many entities were on the map. What was more, reset could be manipulated by removing certain things such as parts or Easter egg elements to get a longer time. In Moon's case, one of the largest reducers of reset was actually the Simon Says panels near spawn for the Easter egg. Every time these screens flashed, they took up an entity. Therefore, actually playing the minigame became meta, as you would get a longer reset if you finished the minigame and they no longer flashed. Another big entity removal discovered was the triggers to pick up the PES space mask. Since there are 9 airlocks where it's available, holding the PES removes all of these for the time you spend holding it. So it's actually beneficial to hold the PES as long as you don't need to hold the hacker, although this was hard to put into practice. Moon was quiet for the rest of 2016 and all of 2017. Then Furret, still dissatisfied with his game, would return to the map and attempt an even higher round. Here, since we have footage this time, we can see a little better what the trading strategy looked like. The hacker has an interesting interaction with box locations where you can manipulate them to your advantage. There are 4 different box locations on Moon, but if you hack an empty one that is not occupied by the box, it will not only give you a free hit from that location, it will prevent the real box from moving there for 3 to 5 rounds. So if you hack all 3 empty locations, the box cannot move at all for a few rounds. This was very helpful as players could simply force the box to move to spawn where the strategy was, and then keep hitting it over and over with no fear of it running away, then instantly go back to the strategy when they had what they wanted out of it. This was one aspect that made trades much more reliable and faster than running across the entire map to the biodome. Although, of course, you could still mix in doming when you were up there to hack the box location. In this game, Furret did have to start thinking more about what he was trading when. If he used all his Gershes but didn't get a drop, he could trade either Gershes for QEDs and back to Gershes, or he could trade the wave gun, or both. If he could get Wavegun back before getting Gershes back, since the box was always in spawn, he could continue to hit it while killing it and doing the strategy, making the overall game faster. But he had to make sure he had drops left in the round to farm with Gershes, or a trip with No Man's Land up to Pack-a-Punch if he needed more than one full Wavegun to finish the round. Additionally, he could trade the Wavegun right before he went to No Man's Land and be able to use all the unupgraded ammo before he Pack-a-Punched it, giving him essentially extra shots. It all depended on what what he needed to finish the round, making the gameplay a lot more dynamic and thoughtful. However, this did come with one big problem, which I'll explain in a second. Furret played mostly the same as his 208, but was more careful about things that would cause him to error as he had in his 208. He used the same Semtex insta-kill strategy, slightly moving the position of his throw to kill him, and everything was going beautifully, but one thing he did not account for was box kill. This is when you hit the mystery box a few thousand times and the game crashes in Black Ops 1. However, this error can occur early if you throw explosives at full hordes and destabilize the game, which is exactly what happened when Furret was trading on round 213. Players would often do this to check if they had all the zombies before they ran across the map by seeing how many points they got, 10 for each zombie. In this case, if you had them all, you'd want to damage them before you went to another area to hack into box locations or use QEDs on the horde. As on maps after Ascension on Black Ops 1, damaged zombies will not respawn due to you being too far away from them. But this trick turned out to be Furret's doom. 1 second Furret was preparing to beat the room, the next, the game was over.
Yo, what the fuck?
What happened? Simon. Oh, I saw that live, dude.
Despite the frustrating end of this game 5 hours before reset, Furret still now had the uncontested world record, and no one could scrape his main skill. Toward the end of 2018, a player named Gyro would achieve round 211, coming closely within orbit of the record. He played the exact same way, but he was just a little too slow to beat Furret before reset, so no new territory was explored. A year later, the same thing happened again, with a player named Phone Stevie resetting on 208. Stevie actually pioneered some new tech in this game, which despite its simplicity, was used by most players after his game. Instead of throwing grenades to damage all zombies before leaving a zone, he would simply spam any bullet weapon into them. This took a few seconds longer, but it didn't destabilize the game after hitting the box so much. But it wasn't until May of 2020, almost 2.5 years after the 213, that the record would be pushed by none other than Furret himself for the third time in a row. Furret was going for the God game, one that wouldn't end early due to crashes and could put to use all of the optimizations discovered on Moon thus far. In the time leading up to this game, especially when COVID hit and he had much more time to play, he had knocked out a 176 crash, a 160 death, and many games where he quit due to bad luck in the 120s to 160s. All these restarts taught him optimizations like manipulating the excavator's rudder to trap the Astro faster. You can actually force better luck for the excavator you want to trap the Astro with to come. When the excavators start their 4-minute sequence of approaching an area to breach, they actually physically move during those 4 minutes and get in position to dig. When you hack them, their animation simply plays in reverse. So the longer you wait to hack one, the longer it will take to move back into position and reset itself. While it's unavailable like this, and the rounds are quick, you force only the other two to come. It was understanding small quirks like this that separated the good Moon players from the great ones. But Furret would need more than just small optimizations. He needed luck, box luck, drop luck, and in Moon's case, miracle luck too. And he got some pretty amusingly lucky and unlucky landings in his next big game. For example, on round 75, he had to do an early trade when his wave gun ran dry and he got absolutely no drops from Gershon. Within a minute, he got QEDs back out of the box, threw them, and the very first one gave him a wave gun back as a drop. But sometimes they were unforgiving, such as when he flew in on 182 and it teleported him right into the excavator and nearly into the excavator itself, forcing him to use the astronaut's teleporter pad to leave the room and losing him Juggernog in the process. Luckily, he was able to return PhD swap over to the hacker and use that slot to rebuy Juggernog, but he lost his 5 for its 7. For insta-kill rounds, Furret used the M14 and spawn strategy, although since he had hacked the wall buy and reversed the prices, he double bought ammo every time, giving him 16 extra shots. With this strategy, he wouldn't risk destabilizing the game by throwing too many Semtexes like with the old insta-kill strategy. Plus, it was just faster to play M14. He reached 200 in just 57 hours, zooming along at a never-before-seen pace. On round 209, he had an unfortunate circumstance where he threw a Gersh and 3 power-up drops spawned at once. This was bad, because 2 of them went to waste, as he obviously couldn't turn one into a match, use his entire movement, and utilize the others before they disappeared. Normally, to prevent this, players would shoot the horde with the wave gun the second they hit a drop spawn to prevent more zombies from dropping time. Additionally, you could start throwing another Gersh, as while throwing or holding a Gersh, no drops can spawn. But sometimes you simply couldn't do that fast enough, so this was not a never-before-seen occurrence. Another thing working against him and players in general was the infamous Black Ops 1 sound bug. If your audio device disconnects, you will lose all sound for the rest of the game. On Moon, this is doom, as you can't hear drop spawning or excavators coming. This actually happened to Ferret on round 212, but he was able to use a zombies program called Twitch Integration Mod, or TIN, to fix it, which is allowed by community standards. On round 221, Ferret actually freed the astronaut from the excavator, only to lead him to his death. He could still kill him easily because that astronaut had spawned in on a very early round, and doing so gave him 24 zombies per board instead of 23, as another zombie could take the astronaut's slot, speeding up the round slightly as he had bigger hordes. Once he rolled over to round 222, he knew he would not have time to finish the round, as 221 had taken over an hour and he only had 20 minutes left before reset. So instead, he did what any sane player would do. He used the last 20 minutes to do the Easter egg, which was made a bit easier since 222 is an insta-kill round. Pretty soon, his reset timer finally ran out, and he dove into the chasm right as his game restarted. At the time, this game was considered maxed out, the best moon game you could get, as Ferret had played with perfect decision-making under the circumstances, top-tier movement around the map, and gotten lucky overall with box hits and drops. As such, this record would remain at the top for longer than any other moon record in history, 3.5 years. And in fact, it's still the record using this strategy. But you may have heard about this game for other reasons. In fact, you may have heard about Ferret for other reasons. And that's something I want to address while talking about this game. Last year, I uploaded a video talking about another world record of Ferret's and said this: Ferret's luck in this game was so good that some players have even accused him of cheating. However, if you want my personal opinion, I think this game is totally legit based on the simple fact of how much Ferret is known to play, study, and admire the game, and how this game is not actually as optimized as you might think by today's standards. Looking back on it, this explanation is pretty vague and unsupported and bad, and some commenters pointed that out to me, so I want to dive deeper. I think it's gotten to the point where some people have just heard from other people these cheating accusations, and don't know where it stems from, what happened, or why I would be talking about any of Ferret's records if they were cheating. And especially since half of this video is about Ferret, I'm going to give you a flash explanation of all of those things. Most of the cheating accusations stem from this video that Krups uploaded before he left the community. However, a range of community members from across the high-rank scene have brought to my attention that Krups' arguments for suspicion of Ferret cheating have logical fallacies that were not addressed until recently. Both Ace Red, the player who did the math for the video in the first place, and Krups himself later came out and said that they had made a mistake, though I think that has gone under the radar. Now, let me make one thing abundantly clear. This explanation should not be taken as me taking sides in this argument or trying to stir up drama. I like Krups' videos. He was the one who originally inspired me to make world record histories. I have no intention of disrespecting him or minimizing his experience. But I think there's more to the story than what you see in his video, and I want to explain that here. Krups' point was essentially that Ferret's mystery box luck, his Ascension 244 world record, and his Moon 222 world record, the game we just talked about, was so outlandish that it was impossible. He and a small group of others began calculating the statistical probability of several of the highest rounds on Moon and Ascension alongside Ferret's games. The conclusion they came to was this: a person would have a 1 in 150,000 chance to get the same box luck as Ferret's Ascension game or better, and a 1 in 15,000 chance for his Moon box luck or better. They calculated this by first using a mathematical formula called the binomial distribution, which is used for finding the probability of the number of successes within a set number of trials. In this case, desired weapons out of the randomness of the box. There are 3 weapons they accounted for: the Wonder Weapon and the 2 tactical grenade types. Considering the number of times Ferret received the Wonder Weapon, 1 tactical grenade type, or the other out of the box, and how many times he hit the box intending for it in general, they found the likelihood of being as lucky as he was for each. For example, in his Moon 222, the binomial distribution distribution stated that his wave gun luck was in the top 1.1%, his Gersh luck in the top 2%, and his QED luck in the top 30%. However, after finding these three statistics, they multiplied them all together, claiming that his luck across all three areas in the moon game was in the top 0.007%. Now, that would be accurate if they were independent events. For example, flipping a coin 3 times in a row for 50% heads, 50% tails, would be 0.5 times 0.5 times 0.5, or 0.125, 1 in 8 for any given outcome. But doing it that way for box hits does not make sense, as the outcomes considered successes overlap from the same set of trials. This is because when you are hitting the box, there are sometimes two desirables that you do not have. For example, if you hit the box while you have no Thundergun on Ascension and Dolls instead of Gershes, that is a trial for both the Thundergun and Gershes. Yet, they counted these twice. As a counterexample, let's take the least lucky game Krups analyzed, Mercury's 234 Ascension game. Because of how unlucky this game was, I'm actually going to take the negative statistic for each weapon and explain it like this. If you start up an Ascension game, you have a 48% chance of getting worse Thundergun luck than Mercury, an 8% chance of getting worse Gersh luck than Mercury, and a 25% chance of getting worse Doll luck than Mercury. So from this, you'd think it's rather hard to get a more unlucky game than Mercury's. Yet, according to the video's logic, 2/3 of all Ascension games in existence have worse luck than Mercury, which doesn't make any sense. The bottom line is that this calculation massively inflates the luck statistic of any game you apply it to, because percentages are always going to get smaller if you multiply them together, and they're going to start skewing exponentially if you use percentages from the same set of trials. Krupp said himself he did not realize the calculations were wrong at the time, and he would not have included them if he knew. So if Furt's games weren't 1 in 150,000 and 1 in 15,000, how lucky were they? Well, it's extremely hard to calculate the actual luck of a game to find out if it's suspicious or cheated. Proving cheating is not as simple as analyzing the number of times you get these things out of the box. Especially on Ascension, many times, dolls are not considered situationally to be a successful pull, and in fact they are worse to get because half the time Furt did not want to replace his Gershes, and he had to take more
tenacious adventurers. It's fascinating to see the lengths you'll go to reach your goals. Emissaries of pain and death. It's inspiring.